They told me I would never defeat Rome. They said it was impossible. From Carthage, I watched their empire rise. I saw them take what belonged to my people, but I would make sure they paid. My name became a whisper of fear. The Romans called me a monster, a threat to their empire, but I was something more. I was the wildfire that raged across their lands, a disease eating them from within, a shadow that stalked their every move, a lesson they would never forget. This is how I almost brought Rome to its knees. My decision to attack Rome in 218 BC was not made lightly, but was born out of a series of events and deeply ingrained enmity that shaped my resolve. Firstly, the seeds of my determination were planted by my father, Hannibal Barca, a formidable general. From a young age, he instilled in me a profound hatred for Rome. I recall the vow I made, at the age of 9, standing beside my father at the altar, swearing eternal hostility towards Rome. This oath was not merely a child's promise, it became the guiding star of my military and political life. Our enmity with Rome was deep-rooted and historical. The First Punic War, which ended in 241 BCE, saw Carthage suffer a humiliating defeat, losing our valuable territories in Sicily. The subsequent imposition of harsh reparations and the loss of Sardinia and Corsica to Roman treachery further fueled our resentment. Rome's relentless expansionism and their arrogance towards Carthage were intolerable. In my early campaigns in Spain, I sought to strengthen Carthage's position and expand our influence. I succeeded in capturing Saguntum, a Roman ally, despite their protests. This act was a direct challenge to Rome's authority and a statement of Carthaginian resilience. However, I knew that mere territorial gains in Spain would not suffice to avenge Carthage's past humiliations. I understood that to truly cripple Rome, we had to strike at their heart. The Romans, confident in their dominance, would not expect an attack on their homeland, especially from the north. This audacious plan involved crossing the formidable Alps, a feat considered impossible by many. Yet it was this very impossibility that made the plan so appealing and potentially devastating. My ultimate goal was not just military victory, but to dismantle the Roman Confederation by inciting revolts among their allies and weakening their internal cohesion. I aimed to show the Italian states that Rome was not invincible and that an alliance with Carthage could offer them liberation from Roman tyranny. I resolved to lead my forces into Italy, with 50,000 infantry, 9,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants, bypassing the well-guarded coastal routes and catching the Romans off guard. To achieve this, we had to traverse the Alps. But I knew that the element of surprise and the psychological impact of such a feat would be crucial to our campaign. The journey began in late autumn, a time when the mountains were shrouded in snow and ice. We started from the Rhone Valley, where we faced immediate resistance from local tribes. These initial skirmishes tested our mettle, but we pressed on, knowing that turning back was not an option. As we ascended, the conditions grew harsher. The narrow paths were treacherous, often barely wide enough for our men and animals. Our cavalry and elephants struggled on the slippery, rocky slopes, and many times we had to halt to clear debris or build makeshift bridges. The cold was relentless, biting through our clothes and sapping the strength of even the hardiest soldiers. Morale was a constant concern. My men were exhausted, hungry, and beset by doubt. Yet I knew that my leadership was paramount. I rode alongside them, sharing their hardships, and continually reminded them of the glory and spoils that awaited us in Italy. I invoked our shared hatred of Rome, the memory of our fallen comrades, and the vision of Carthage's resurgence. One of the most harrowing moments came when we reached the summit. The view of Italy in the distance was both a promise and a taunt. We had overcome the ascent, but the descent posed its own deadly risks. Here, the path was even more perilous, with steep drops and loose rocks. It was during these moments that we lost many men and animals, including some of our prized elephants. Our arrival in Italy was a triumph of will and endurance. The Romans were stunned, unprepared for an enemy that had crossed what they believed to be an impregnable barrier. This strategic masterstroke allowed us to engage them on favorable terms, sowing fear and confusion among their ranks. The crossing of the Alps was more than a military maneuver. It was a declaration of Carthaginian resilience and my personal commitment to our cause. It demonstrated that no obstacle was too great, no enemy too formidable for our resolve. This journey, fraught with peril and sacrifice, forged a bond among my men and set the stage for our campaigns against Rome, proving that we were willing to defy the impossible to achieve our goals. In November 218 BC, after my arduous journey across the Alps, my army emerged into the Po Valley, ready to confront the Romans. The Battle of Ticinus took place near the river Ticinus, a tributary of the Po River. This encounter would test our mettle and set the stage for the larger conflicts to come. The Roman consul, Publius Cornelius Scipio, had advanced north to intercept us, bringing his cavalry and light infantry to scout and engage my forces. I knew that to maintain the initiative, we had to strike first and strike hard. Our cavalry, renowned for its mobility and effectiveness, would play a crucial role in this engagement. The battlefield near the river offered open terrain suitable for cavalry maneuvers. I positioned my forces with the Numidian cavalry on the flanks, ready to outflank and envelop the enemy. My own heavy cavalry was placed in the center, prepared to break through the Roman lines. As the Romans approached, I rode to the front, rallying my men and reminding them of the hardships we had endured and the glory that awaited us. The signal was given, and our cavalry surged forward with a thunderous charge. The Numidians, agile and swift, quickly engaged the Roman flanks, throwing their ranks into disarray. Scipio, seeing the danger, attempted to reinforce his flanks, but it was too late. Our Numidian cavalry outmaneuvered the Roman horsemen, cutting them down with precision. In the center, my heavy cavalry smashed into the Roman line with the force of a tidal wave. The Romans, taken aback by the ferocity and speed of our assault, faltered. I saw Scipio himself, in the thick of the fighting, attempting to rally his troops. It was a moment that demanded swift action. I ordered a concentrated attack on his position. My men, driven by the desire to strike a decisive blow, pressed forward with relentless determination. Scipio was wounded and forced to retreat, his forces crumbling around him. The sight of their commander in peril shattered the remaining Roman resolve, and they began to fall back into chaos. The Battle of Ticinus was brief but decisive. The Romans suffered significant casualties, and their morale was severely shaken. The engagement demonstrated the superiority of our cavalry and the effectiveness of our tactics. It also served as a warning to Rome that Hannibal and his forces were a formidable adversary. As we move forward, the lessons learned at Ticinus would guide our actions, shaping our approach to subsequent engagements and reinforcing my belief in the power of audacity and tactical brilliance. Our journey had been arduous, but my men were now battle-hardened and eager to confront the enemy. Our initial skirmishes in the region had gone well, and we soon found ourselves near the river Trebia. The Roman consul, Tiberius Sempronius Longus, fresh from his victories in Sicily, was eager to engage us. I could sense his impatience, his desire for a quick and decisive victory, to bolster his standing in Rome. This impatience was a weakness I intended to exploit. The battlefield I chose was strategic, with the Trebia River serving as a natural barrier. Winter had set in, and the cold, wet conditions were harsh. I planned to use these elements to our advantage. My strategy hinged on drawing Romans into a trap, exploiting their overconfidence and lack of familiarity with the terrain. The plan was simple, yet cunning. My brother, Mago, was hidden with a select force in a dense woodland, waiting for my signal to spring the trap. I began by ordering my Numidian cavalry to launch a feigned attack on the Roman camp at dawn. As expected, Sempronius took the bait. In his haste, he ordered his troops to pursue the Numidians without allowing them to eat or properly prepare for battle. And as planned, the Numidians feigned retreat, drawing the Romans across the icy waters of the Trebia. Their heavy infantry slogged through the freezing river, their momentum slowed by the biting cold and treacherous current. I watched with satisfaction as the Roman army crossed, their eagerness to crush us blinding them to the true danger. The chill of the winter air cuts through my armor. The river, swollen and icy, forms a natural barrier that the Romans have foolishly crossed, their soldiers shivering and fatigued from the ordeal. The Roman army, under the command of Consul Sempronius Longus, numbers around 40,000 men. They have arranged themselves in a typical legion formation. On their flanks, their cavalry units, though fewer in number and visibly uneasy, prepare to charge. In contrast, my army is slightly smaller, with around 30,000 men, but we are far more strategically positioned and ready for battle. At the forefront of my formation, I have placed a mix of Libyan and Iberian infantry, their curved swords and swift movements, designed to lure the Romans into our trap. My Gallic allies, fierce and eager for Roman blood, form a crucial part of our force. Flanking my infantry are my Numidian cavalry, light and agile riders armed with javelins. Hidden in the woods to my left, my youngest brother Mago waits with his cavalry, ready to spring a devastating flanking attack when the moment is right. Behind my main lines, my war elephants stand tall and imposing, their presence a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. The mere sight of these towering beasts instills fear and chaos among the enemy ranks. Our forces advanced with a battle cry that echoed across the field. The clash was immediate and fierce. The Romans, despite their weakened state, fought with the desperation of cornered beasts. Their front lines engaged ours in a brutal melee, the sound of clashing metal and the cries of the wounded filling the air. It was then that I signaled Mago. His forces erupted from their concealment, descending upon the Roman rear with devastating effect. The Roman soldiers, caught between our main force and Mago's ambush, were thrown into disarray. Panic spread like wildfire through their ranks. Our elephants charged, their massive forms trampling over the disoriented Romans, their presence alone causing many to break and flee. The Numidian cavalry, swift and relentless, harried the Roman flanks, ensuring no quarter was given. I rode among my men, shouting encouragement, my voice carrying above the din of battle. The sight of their general fighting alongside them inspired my troops to fight with even greater ferocity. Sempronius, for all his bravado, was now faced with the harsh reality of our strategic prowess, trying to rally his men, but our strategy was flawless, our resolve unyielding. The Romans, for all their discipline, could not withstand our coordinated and multifaceted assault. We encircled them, tightening the noose with every passing moment. Sempronius himself was a sight to behold. Amidst the chaos, he fought with determination, his face a mask of resolve and desperation. Yet even his personal valor could not turn the tide. The river, which had initially seemed a mere obstacle, became a deadly trap for the retreating Romans. The riverbanks ran red with their blood, staining the snow and ice in a grim testament to our victory. Many were cut down as they tried to recross the icy waters, their retreat turning into a rout. The cold, wet conditions sapped their strength and will to fight, while my men, hardened by our trials in the Alps, fought with a ferocity born of determination and revenge. By the day's end, the Roman army lay shattered. Thousands of their soldiers were killed and many more were captured. The victory at Trebia was not just a tactical triumph, it was a psychological blow to Rome. It demonstrated our strategic superiority and highlighted the folly of underestimating Carthage. The June of 217 BC, after our victories at the Trebia and the Ticinus, I continued my campaign in Italy. From the beginning of our campaign, Roman consul Gaius Flaminius, known for his rashness and overconfidence, was eager to confront us. He was incensed by the audacity of my invasion and the devastation we wrought upon Roman lands. His desire for a decisive victory was palpable, and he pursued us with a zeal that bordered on recklessness. He believed that swift action and overwhelming force would crush our resistance and restore Roman honor. I knew that Flaminius's impetuous nature could be turned against him. I chose the northern shore of Lake Trasimene for our ambush. The narrow path between the hills and the lake would force the Roman army into a tight column, making it difficult for them to maneuver. The hills, covered in dense forests, provided excellent concealment for our troops. The fog, that often rolled in from the lake at dawn, would further aid our cause, obscuring our positions, until it was too late for the Romans to react. The preparations began in earnest. I personally oversaw the placement of my troops. My infantry, the core of our force, were hidden in the woods along the hillside, ready to descend upon the enemy from above. The Gauls were stationed at the forefront. My trusted Numidian cavalry were positioned to block any potential escape routes and to strike the Roman rear when the time came. Every detail was meticulously planned. We spent days ensuring our positions were perfect. The men were instructed to hold their positions without making a sound, to blend into the forest as if they were part of it. The element of surprise was our greatest weapon, and we had to wield it with precision. In the early hours of the morning, we took our final positions. The fog began to roll in, thick and enveloping, just as I had hoped. I could barely see the lake from my vantage point, but I knew the Romans would be advancing along the narrow path soon. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the moment we had prepared for. I signaled for silence, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The sound of the Roman march grew louder, the clinking of armor and the steady tramp of feet echoing through the fog. They were walking into our trap, oblivious to the doom that awaited them. As the first ranks of the Roman army entered the defile, with a single sharp gesture I gave the signal. The silence of the morning was shattered by the war cries of my men as they charged down the hills. The battle unfolded with ruthless efficiency. I could see the confusion and panic spreading among the Roman ranks. Their vanguard was under assault while their rear was simultaneously attacked, preventing any chance of retreat or reorganization. Unable to form a coherent defense, Romans were being slaughtered. Many in their desperation tried to swim across the lake, only to drown in its cold waters. The dense fog further disoriented them, adding to their despair. Flaminius desperately trying to rally his troops, but it was futile. The terrain and our ferocity had sealed their doom. Our cavalry swooped in from the flanks, obliterating everyone who stood on its path. The cries of battle, the clashing of weapons, and the shouts of my commanders echoed through the valley. Every moment and every action was unfolding as I had envisioned. I watched as Flaminius fell, surrounded by Gallic warriors. His death marked the utter collapse of Roman resistance. The battle raged on, but it was clear that victory was ours. The Romans, who had entered the narrow path with such confidence, were now trapped, many drowning in the lake as they tried to escape. Others cut down where they stood. The lake, once peaceful, now turned crimson with their blood. The victory was complete, and the cost to my forces was minimal. As the sun rose higher, burning away the last of the fog, the full extent of our triumph became clear. Over 30,000 Roman soldiers entered the battlefield, yet only a small fraction managed to escape. My forces, numbering around 50,000 men, were well prepared and disciplined. We suffered losses, but they were minimal compared to the devastation inflicted on the enemy. The Roman legions were decimated, with over 15,000 killed on the battlefield. Thousands more were captured, and many drowned in the lake. The loss on the Roman side was not just in numbers, but in morale. The death of their commander dealt a significant blow to their spirit. My plan had succeeded beyond my expectations, and the road to further conquests lay open before me.